Health and wellness are more than a destination. They are a process and a journey of personal choice. Come hear from people out in the field, doing the work, bringing health and wellness to many. Welcome, everyone. Today I have a wonderful guest, Megan Mary, and she is, she has so many things she's done. She's a wonderful human being, but she's a metaphysical author, she's a mystic, a dream analyst, and many other accomplishments. We're just going to get into it. Megan, welcome and thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Kathleen.
So I know you've done all these things. I would just love you to sort of share with our audience where your journey began and a little bit about it.
I would go back to when I was a child and just the fact that I always felt very drawn to the behind the veil, let's say. As an introvert and a Scorpio, I was always drawn to mysteries and I was always very interested with what we could not see and the extra senses that we did have that were often dismissed. And so that was really something that I've always felt my whole life. And at that time, I did have a lot of amazing dreams and also a lot of recurring nightmares. And I always wondered why I was having them, what they meant, why we spent so much time dreaming, why nobody talked about it. And that was always a fascination I had as well. But really became part of my, I guess, career path forward later in life when I experienced a series of chronic illness diagnoses and started to have to do a whole bunch of inner work and mind, body, spirit work that I had not done before. And when I started to do that, the dreams took on a whole different role in my life. And I realized that that was a gateway. And it was also at the time that I started writing fiction. And that became a creative pathway for me to share what I was experiencing. And I also created the podcast, which you've been a guest on, and that allows women to tell their stories. So it really was a multi-layered situation that led me to this place where I started really working in the other realms all the time.
I love that. And I mean, dreams are incredibly powerful, but we are not educated again about that. You know, there are many things that we don't understand because we aren't taught, like even about now meditation's more known. But I remember when I first did it, nobody even thought it was important and they didn't really understand it, right? So the same with dreams. And I find it interesting what a student you are. You have multiple university degrees. You are a PhD, and in you have been working in the field of metaphysical science, which of course I love because that's my passion also. So I'm curious a little bit about that because so you were interested in the dreams and you were interested, and then you started studying. You've been a studier.
I have a kind of eternal quest for knowledge. I just can't always feel like there's more to know. And then I'm always trying to learn more. And so my initial degrees, my bachelor's and my master's were in English literature, not in creative writing, though, I would say. I only took one creative writing class. And when I did that, I was concentrating on poetry. So I had never even attempted to write a story until I wrote this story. Um, After that, I just kept getting all different kinds of certifications. So during the situation a few years back where everyone could not leave their house, I went back to school and went back for plant-based nutrition and also online culinary school. And most recently, studying metaphysics. So, yes, working towards the PhD in metaphysical sciences and just continually trying to just increase my knowledge and integrate it all into my work.
So, how would you define or describe metaphysics to our audience? Like for those out there that have no clue what it is. I think it's,
The literal definition, I believe, is the study of what cannot be seen, beyond what we know, beyond what we sense, beyond what we hold to be true. So that is really the basis of that pathway, but it comprises a huge compilation of so many different branches, right? So it's ancient traditions combined with modern practitioners. So it could be anything from divination, numerology, reincarnation, meditation, channeling, mediumship. Yeah, the study of vortexes and labyrinths and synchronicities, angels, dragons, all of those mythological aspects, as well as the practical, the herbs and the stones and sound frequencies and
yes, sound freak.
all of those applications.
That is so beautiful. I'm as you're speaking about all these things, I'm thinking also of, I took a spiritual, I was with a lady who was taking us to the nature. And I don't know, like I have a very strong Irish background, but I was suddenly with the mystical, like she had us kind of connecting with well, they call them the little people. There I was in the middle of nature and in the quietest place. I think everyone, and I was there for so long and I've never done that. Of course, I just normally I'm moving in nature and I'm not just standing there. And suddenly I could feel these little kind of like somebody was touching me on my legs. And it was so cool. So I mean,
Hmm.
things like this also, but I really appreciate what your work is because you have studied it all. Now, and I think there is a science, right, Megan? Like honestly, this is not just up in the sky or pie in the sky. There's a whole field of science that we are
Yes.
not paying attention to really, or maybe now we are.
Yes. So it's merging science and spirituality. It's where they meet, but it also utilizes a lot of things that have already been proven in scientific studies. So quantum physics, for example, and astronomy. Okay, so we
Yeah.
study astronomy, and that's an approved doctrine, a place to study. But then we have astrology, where so we know that the sun is shooting off solar flares. We know that this is an electromagnetic planet. We know that there's energy flowing around us all the time that we can't see, Wi-Fi, for example. But try to tell someone that Mercury retrograde next week, the lunar eclipse on Thursday, and the solar flares that are happening right now is affecting why your email isn't working, why your camera didn't come up,
Yeah.
why your car isn't starting, why you woke up late. All of those, and people say, well, yes, we recognize that this is happening, but no, it has nothing to do with that.
Venus retrograde too now. So we're going
Yes.
into a new, but now by the time the
Yeah.
video comes out, we'll have had the effects of all this. But all of these, I've been following astrology for many years, but it is not an absolute. I really believe it's more of a guidance. I loved one astrologer. She said it's like helping yourself go with the energy, like you're going, you're not going up a hill fighting. You're going kind of down the hill and you're getting a lot of movement if you understand it.
Yes, and living with the moon cycles is a similar
Yeah.
path. We understand we can stand there on the beach and we can see the tide go in and out, and we understand clearly that the moon affects the tide,
Yeah.
and we understand that we are made mostly of water, but then we don't really pay attention to the effect it's having on our life. And go against that. So there's certain times of the a month based on the lunar cycle where it's better to be productive, where it's better to rest, all those types of things. And yeah, you can try to fight against the system, but once you're aware of the celestial events and how we are part of that cosmos, we are not just living in it and not part of it,
Yeah.
then you get that larger perspective.
It's so true what you say. And I find the biggest problem is humanity is having trouble. just accepting that their spirit in a body, like that's already
Oh,
an.
yes,
And I'm like, excuse me, we are not our
100%.
body. Obviously, we're going to leave it. And we're just coming here in a temporary body to have an experience. But anyway, it's so hard
Yeah.
to explain and understand. And we're all doing our best, I would say. So you've been working with women, which I have also. Tell me about that. Why have you're obviously this is your passion on some level.
It really is. And all of the different business ventures that I have are out there for women. They focus specifically on women, and each one has a different purpose. So the podcast is really a platform for women to come on and tell their stories. It's called Women's Dream Enlightenment, and it's a combination of women opening their dream journals and sharing their actual dreams that I interpret on the show, as well as them telling their stories of spiritual awakening, as well as just having deep discussions like we are now about metaphysics
Yeah.
and quantum health and all the different aspects of things. And then I also work exclusively with women to help them understand their dreams, help them understand that those aren't just things to discard, that they're aspects of our self, of our greater universal self, and that they are a doorway to our intuition, that they are our multi representation of our multidimensional self, and that we can understand so much more about ourself and our place in the world and our pathway forward if we learn how to listen to the messages that are in the stories
Yeah.
in the dreams.
That's so cool. Tell me a little bit. Maybe you can give us some examples because I know myself, I've had dreams that are they're really like people have died and then they come in the dream and talk to me. That has happened to me a lot. Or I get sort of a premonition in the dream of what's going to happen. I'm told a message, but that's like more clear because like those dreams for me were like, okay, that's obvious, right? But what are some examples for those listening where they can learn from you?
So that's part of the reason that I wrote my stories and my books, because in the first book, there's 13 dream scenes. And those dreams, some of them are mine, I'm not going to tell you which ones, but some of them are mine,
Yeah.
will tell you, they lead you through on the pathway through the story. And in book two of the series, she actually learns how to start really understanding her dreams more, using them to access more aspects of other realms and the answers that she's seeking. And I've also weaved in there my method, which is the dream mirror method. So I've weaved that into the story so that it's another way people can access that information. And so I really comprised this method to be accessible to people as a way that people could start to look at their dreams and say, well, what does this mean? And not look at a dream dictionary, because a dream dictionary is someone else's interpretation, association, mythological representation, philosophical or historical connection that is not specific to you. So you really want to not be swayed by that and look at it specifically to your lexicon, which is very different from anyone else's. So the method that I use is 4 steps, and it's memory, mood, mirror, and metaphor. So memory is remembering your dream, which isn't completely easy. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a skill in itself for some people. Now, for me, I spontaneously remember more than I care to write down every night. But for a lot of people, they don't have that. So it's a mindful practice, just like learning how to meditate, learning how to do yoga, learning how to calm your nervous system. All of those things take application, dedication, making the time and space for it. So that's the first step. It's just remembering it, writing it
Can I
down in
ask
as
you
much
something
detail.
about that?
Yeah,
When you're going to sleep, like, could you give yourself an intention?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. Absolutely. And that's there's something called dream incubation or dream manifestation where you can actually not only say I'm going to remember them, but this is what the kind of dream I'm going to have or what I want the dream to show me. So I need a solution to this problem or this challenge that I'm having, or I want to rearrange my furniture, or I want to find a new job, or I want to come up with my next chapter, whatever it is. And you can you're basically asking of your subconscious to show you the answer.
Yeah.
And you might wake up and say, well, I had this crazy dream about this and this, and it was so weird. And I don't understand how that's the answer. But that's because you have to decode it
Yes.
and you have to look at all the little pieces and figure out what those mean.
The second you were, that was the first to
Mhm.
remember. And the second,
The second is mood, and that's where we really pay attention to the emotions that we experience in the dream. Because when you're sleeping, the parts of your brain that control your emotion are active as if you're awake.
yeah,
And so you're experiencing the dream as if you're awake, which is why when you wake up, you sometimes might still feel that emotion. Sometimes you feel a completely different emotion. You might have been terrified in the dream and you wake up relieved, or you might be happy in the dream and you wake up sad, or it could be the same, like a pullover of that dream,
sometimes
of that emotion.
you want to finish it and you're like, why did I
Yeah,
wake up? I want to go back.
right. And you
Yeah.
can do that. So that's the next step is really just to pay attention to, okay, this happened in the dream and how did I feel about it? Because it's not going to be the same for anybody. Two people might sit down at the breakfast table and say, I had a dream about my teeth falling out. I did too. And one person might say, and I was so relieved. And the other person might say, I was so terrified. So it's going to be unique to you, which is the other reason the dictionaries don't work. So you want to pay attention to how you resonated with that.
Megan, I wanted to share one thing. I had a dream about a month ago, and it was so interesting because I'm very afraid of spiders. Like, I'm gonna just be honest. And in this dream, I was hugging not only a spider, but a big spider. I was
Okay.
hugging the spider, and I didn't get afraid. And I was like, that I woke up kind of like, that was so weird. But that's
That's a
weird.
perfect, yeah, that's a perfect example of how someone else might have a dream about spiders and be totally terrified. And it was all also out of character for you.
The spider had all this fur on all the legs, and I was
Hmm.
hugging him like a teddy bear. That was so bizarre. I thought,
And
oh my God. Like, I mean, what would you say? That's so crazy.
well, I would first ask you, okay, what was the person or the object in the dream? In this case, it's the spider. It might be a
Yeah,
person or an object. Could be either, right?
yeah.
The next thing we're going to say, well, okay, well, what was the action in the dream? What was happening? And you're going to say, I was hugging, I was embracing. Okay. And then I would say, well, what was your mood? And you would say, I wasn't scared. I might have
Yeah.
even actually felt the opposite of fear, which is what? Love.
And also surprised that I was surprised.
That is very much because someone else might have a pet tarantula, right? And so they have no association of fear with
No,
spiders.
no, you're right.
So that's going to mean something completely different to them. But in your case, because you know that consciously you know that is something you're afraid of,
Yes.
that's you embracing your fears.
I mean, seems so obvious now, but at the time I woke up going,
Right.
that was crazy.
Okay.
So so then what happened? So the mood and then
The third part is mirror, and that's where kind of what we just did. You look at the people, the places, the situations, the actions, and we look at it as a mirror to your subconscious. So, who is in the dream? What is taking place? Where is this taking place? And what are all the little pieces? So, there's probably more to this. There's things that happen before, there's things that happen after, and looking at the bigger picture of all those things and the really microscopic view of all the little things. And then the last step is metaphor, which we just did, which is where we say, okay, this story of you embracing this very hairy spider and not being scared, how is that a metaphor for your waking life? How are you in your life realizing that you're overcoming and embracing these fears that you have experienced in the past and that you are no longer letting stop you?
that is true. I mean, it is a big moment for me in life, but I think many people are coming, many light workers, many people who have been on a journey for years and have been plagued with fear are now kind of being freed of this and they're facing it. And I do
Yes.
think our astrology is helping us, but I do think it's really cool. And so that is a dream, for instance, I will never forget. So you can say to yourself, like, certain dreams you do forget, right? You really do. And is it good to write them down, Megan? Because it is
Absolutely.
easy. Yeah, it is
You
easy.
will, yes, you will forget it and it will be gone most of the cases. So within the first 5 minutes, you forget 50%. And unless something triggers you, which sometimes it will in the course of your day, you likely will forget it because those thoughts go back into the subconscious. The conscious gets filled with what today has to do with all the distractions, and there isn't time to reflect on it. So I do write down as much as I can, even if it's short notes, even if I don't have time and it's just short notes or brief descriptions. But then I'll go back and I'll go, wow, I don't even remember having that. Or, oh, I remember having that. So the one thing that I find so fascinating is that when I'm in that in between state, I will always convince myself I don't need to write this down. I know what it means. This isn't anything important. And then when I wake up, I always regret it. I'm always like, why didn't you write that down? That could have been the answer you were looking for today, and you just dismissed it before you even had a chance to analyze it.
Sometimes when these things are coming in the middle of the night or you get woken up, you're tired. And I know that from when I wrote a book and I was kind of channeling at night. And, but I think you have to, it's like discipline to write it at that moment because you're kind of tired and you're like, oh, I don't know. But I do think it's like a discipline.
And there's methods that you can use so that it doesn't disrupt you from going back to sleep. So, Patricia Garfield is a famous dream analyst, and she got used to writing with her eyes closed
Oh,
by holding the journal and guiding herself with her fingers where she was on the page. And I have been trying to perfect that method so that I can just write it and not look. Of course, sometimes I end up writing over myself or I look back the next day and you can't read it. So the next best thing is that there is pens you can buy that have a built-in red light.
oh.
And so you are able to it just lights up the page and it doesn't disrupt your melatonin production and it doesn't disrupt your sleeping partner. It just lets you record it enough so that it's legible.
So let me ask you something. What, like, if somebody were to come to you and say, okay, you've been putting dream and subconscious together, those words, but what is a dream? Like,
Hmm.
because the thing is, the reason I'm asking it like this is because I have been taught through my metaphysical understanding that a dream is also real. It's not something not real. It's also a creation in a way. And so if we create our reality, the thing is, we think the dream is not real, and we think
Yes.
this is real, our life here.
Right.
But
Yes.
maybe it's not true. That's an illusion,
True.
right? Would you agree?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So true. And that's the large theme of my book, The Dream Mirrors, is coming out in May, is see through the illusion that it is all an illusion. And we think our imagination is not real. We think our dreams are not real. And we think we know what is real. And we base that on the five senses that have been approved as the okay ones
Yeah.
and the ones that prove fact. And so we base reality on the five senses. And anything that is extrasensory is potentially not real. And anything that we experience outside of those five senses, if it's a vision or it's a dream or it's a any other kind of experience metaphysically, that is not quantified as reality because it can't be proven and fit into those categories. And so that's the really big question. And there's so many people who are investigating it scientifically in the lab. There's sleep medicine doctors, and there's people that are able to see your dream activity when you're on an MRI. And then there's also people, the philosophers and the writers and the artists on the other end that are seeing it as this spiritual creative space. And I think there's room for those to come together. There's a lot of technology that is allowing us to better understand what's happening when we're dreaming. And I don't just think that it's a function of the brain, that it's something that is quantifiable here. I think that the reason that we have to sleep so much is so that we can dream, and that when we dream, that's our time to go back to our spiritual nature. And because we are only here temporarily as humans, when we dream, we go back to the astral plane or multidimensional planes where we are more than human. And if we don't do that, we can't sustain our existence here.
And that is true because people who are not sleeping well are having a lot of time trouble coping. I mean, I can tell you as a nurse
Right.
and a coach, health coach, it's terrible. It's one of the
Yeah.
big problems. So that is so cool though, because I do believe that that reality, when we get that straight, when we understand and we can start, like you said, really paying attention to this dream world and even realize we're creating it for a reason or we need to go there, um, we'll be less afraid, I think, of it. It seems so mysterious, right?
Yes, and it can be traumatizing, right? People, part of the reason that a lot of people say, "Well, I don't dream," is because at some point they subconsciously turned off their dream recall because they had a nightmare or
Yeah.
something that they didn't want to remember, didn't want to deal with. And it's not to say that we don't have those, but we need to embrace those in the same way that we embrace our shadow when we do shadow work. We need to bring that into the holistic understanding of ourselves. We can't all be light. We have to have the duality. We have to have the understanding, and the subconscious and the conscious have to work together.
Once we accept, I've found once we accept those darker sides or the nightmares, then of course they go away, right? Because it's like
Yes,
once they're accepted, then we digest them and then they go away.
correct.
And yeah, it's so beautiful actually. And it's such a I think that part of just that mystery of being curious and not afraid, that's huge. That's a huge step. And I really hope it for humanity. I think this is your life work, Megan. So I think you've done so much work in this field. I'm so excited to read your books. I have another question. Um, so you said, like, for instance, you were ill. You were ill. And I mean, I help people heal. But what this illness, I mean, obviously illness is a disease or dis-ease, right? Something is not at peace on a body, mind, spirit level. Can you address how the dream can help you with this?
So, dreams can show us where we have that disease, right? Because many times those illnesses are just manifestations of emotional blockages or baggage or subconscious beliefs that we're holding on to. And so when we don't acknowledge them, they manifest themselves physically in the body. And so that was part of what I had to recognize and what I had to work on when I started having all of these domino effect with the illnesses was, okay, this is not something that we just want to throw medication at. This is something that we want to address from a spiritual perspective and from a mind perspective too, and say, what is it that is causing this emotional reaction that then it's manifesting in the body? And so the dreams can be the way that we start to understand that. They can show us things through their stories that will allow us to see, oh, okay, yes, that's true. I do need to address that. I should overcome that. I do need to move on from that, whatever it is. Opportunities, it's not always hard work. It could be the solution you're looking for, but uh, our multidimensional self has the all the knowledge, right? And so we are just limited on this three-dimensional plane within this confined existence that we've chosen. And so we can't know everything
No.
here, but the multidimensional self does. So if we can access that information through the dreams, then we can pull those threads into this life to help us evolve and move forward.
And I know it's so important. I've done a lot of work on the subconscious, just accessing the subconscious in general anyway, through hypnosis or EFT or anything. But I do believe the dreams are very powerful because you're on a very, very high level. and then you're really close to your, like you said, your whole self, your true nature, and you can get real information. That's so beautiful how you said that. Now, in the past, we looked at magic as sort of like a taboo. Anyone that, I mean, let's be honest, let's go back in history when the word spiritual in general was not looked at very fondly, and religion was, and there's nothing, I mean, religion can be spiritual, but religion was very controlling in this way. And in the end, a lot of women were very multidimensional, let's say, and they were gifted, let's say, healers. They could help people heal energetically, etc. And they were called witches. And that was crazy in the end because we have so many people on earth right now that have those experiences. Can you address that as far as, yeah, I mean, don't, first of all, I believe my feeling is eventually all humans can reach this understanding, but it is a more holistic understanding.
It's not the typical magic in the hat, rabbit out of the hat
Yeah.
magic. And that's why I spell it with a K in my book series, because it's really the application of applying one's energy and will towards achieving an end. And that can be done in this plane, whether you're utilizing the elements or whether you're utilizing your tapping into your multidimensional self. So the other reason that I named the book the way that I did and that I made the characters the way they are is in the book she says, "We are healers of the hollow. Some call us witches."
Mhm.
And so they're called witches of Maple Hollow almost because that's what other people have called them. But
Yeah,
they know
for
themselves
yeah.
as the healers of the hollow. And it is a matrilineal line of women that all have different powers that have come from this island that they are from, and that they all were persecuted, so they had to leave, and they all moved to this island of Maple Hollow and charmed it to be a place of eternal autumn so that they could live safely and freely and practice. And so that is part of the inspiration for that was to have it be true witches in the way that it is the powerful women, the women with the healing calls, the ones who are called to set themselves aside to help others, that they each have a lineage of knowledge that they have to bring, whatever it is, and that they have their own challenges to bear to be able to take up that obligation, right?
That is your soul path. So
Yes.
you have to do it. I understand. What are your books called? Are they, there's a series of,
It's Witches of Maple Hollow. That's
oh,
the
it's beautiful. Wow, look,
name of the series.
fun.
And so this is the first book, The Dream Haunters.
Lovely.
And the second book is coming out in the end of May, and it's called The Dream Mirrors. And
Okay.
the third book will be out in October. So they're all coming out really fast together so that everyone can embrace them together. But each one is it's a blend of fantasy and mystery, and it tells a story from a metaphysical perspective, but in a cozy, clean way. So it's educational and inspirational.
Well, I'm gonna definitely read them. They sound amazing. And I would say, you know, in my opinion, we've known of the IQ, intellectual intelligence. We've learned EQ, and now we're in this new time of SQ, which is spiritual.
Absolutely.
SI, sorry, spiritual intelligence.
Yes.
So I believe that your wisdom that you shared today, thank you so much for all of it. You're really wise, helps other people to not only make it okay to explore it because we need to make it okay because we are from it. We should not be afraid of it, but also helps us to understand who we are as human beings because we are not linear at all. You know, like you said, we have intuition. If we don't use it, that's a bit of a pity because it's a wonderful way to know who we are and where we should go. And what we're supposed to be doing. So I think it's beautiful, all your words today. Well, I would just love if you wanted to let the audience know what your future, what you would like to do in the future, and any last words you'd like to share.
I'll just share where you can find me. You can find me at meganmary.com. And on there, you can find my podcast, Women's Dream Enlightenment. You can book a session with me to discuss your dreams.
Right.
And you can also take an online course on how to recall your dreams and how to work with them. And you'll find my books, which again is the series is called Witches of Maple Hollow. And it's published by Inner Realms Publishing, which is my own publishing house that I have established to work with women authors, of course. And Inner Realms Publishing also offers book marketing services to women authors around the globe. So there is that. And yes, please go out and listen to Witches of Maple Hollow. The Dream Haunters is available on audiobook and ebook and paperback and hardcover and all of that. And the audiobook for book two is actually being recorded this week by the narrator Pearl Hewitt. So I'm very excited about that. It's going to be
Oh,
amazing.
cool.
And
Well, any last words for
oh,
about
yes.
both?
Connect with your intuition and your dreams because they are the doorway to your universal self. And never doubt that you're a multidimensional being and that this is just a temporary passageway in your life span.
Thank you, Megan, Mary. You're wonderful.
Thank you for having me, Kathleen.
You're welcome.